There are very few places on this earth of ours where nature remains untouched. One of these areas of preserved wilderness is in the far north of Eurasia. Its name is the Taimyr. It is a kingdom of snow, ice, and cold. It is here in the vast and empty expanses of the Arctic that the world's largest population of wild reindeer lives. Each spring, these animals start on a long journey. To try to stop them would be like trying to stop the tide. What guides them? Why do they subject themselves to such trials and tribulations? To unravel one of the riddles of nature and see the route by which the reindeer travel in the icy vastness of the Taimyr, we decided to accompany them on their long and arduous journey full of mortal danger, the route of the wanderers of the north. Winter in the Arctic is the most difficult time for animals. But now, as the sun appears over the snowy mountains, winter with its hardships seems to pass, never to return. Deep in the mountains on the Putrana Plateau and around Beldunshana Lake, numerous herds of reindeer that have withstood the harsh winter are preparing for a long and dangerous journey. They will have to cover great distances, many hundreds of kilometers, through mountains and lakes to reach the Taimyr tundra full of rich fodder. We were in a hurry to get to this place in time for the beginning of the great reindeer journey. We were fortunate to have found a small wooden hut on the shore of the lake quite fit for habitation. It had been built in Soviet times by trappers and fishermen. Today this business has become unprofitable due to the high cost of air travel. It also explains why the winter hut was empty and ice cold. At least we now had a firm roof over our heads and a stove. As to firewood, there was no shortage of it in the taiga forest. It was the beginning of April. The first group of reindeer tries to break through the white snowy silence of the northern mountains, but most of the other reindeer remain close to the lake. They use the good weather to bask in the rather cold sun and search for their favorite Iceland moss in the forest. Meanwhile, the call of the mysterious instinct to move farther and farther becomes stronger with every passing day. Does are the first to move. They are expecting, so they need to hurry to reach the vast expanses of the tundra before calving. The distance they have to cover is 400-odd kilometers. Pregnant does and young reindeer are easily recognizable by the presence of antlers. All the rest have shed them some time ago. Does are soon followed by mixed herds, and the lake becomes a transit corridor, along which endless columns of reindeer move. Soon the surface of the lake is covered with intricate patterns left by the reindeer's hooves on the snow. There are reindeer paths everywhere, even in the deep of the forest. Warmth penetrates all corners of the mountains, gradually eliminating the winter frosts. Still, good weather can quickly change into cold blizzards. The reindeer then flock together and move farther and farther, as if dissolving into a thick, cold mist. Even though they roam in a blanket of fog and snow, they continue to move in the right general direction. In this weather, we saw great herds of reindeer, hundreds and thousands of them, crossing the ice of the lake just like the gnu antelopes of the African savanna. The Putorana Plateau has long been a reliable preserve created by nature herself, where the reindeer can feel quite safe. However, even in such difficult-to-access places like Lake Beldanchana, man doesn't miss a chance to get some fresh meat or fish. Inokenti is the master of the hut in which we live. He has spent several decades in the taiga forest and become a skilled hunter. Last autumn, when the reindeer returned here for the winter, he stocked enough meat to sell it to inhabitants of the nearest settlement. The meat was well preserved in the winter cold, and simple windmills scared away the birds. Venison and fish have been the main staple here for hundreds of years. Today, one cannot expect to meet many Aboriginal people in the mountains here. Long ago, people abandoned their age-old traditions and the way of life of their ancestors. The ways of the past have been dissolved in modern civilization. Local inhabitants have, however, tried to preserve the traditions of breeding and herding reindeer. Gradually, they are reviving this part of their age-old way of life, as both domestic and nomadic reindeer breeders. Local people make clothes and build tents of reindeer hide and fell. At present, despite the increased use of vehicles capable of moving in the snow, reindeer remain the only reliable means of transport in the conditions of the far north, with the absence of roads all year around. The reindeer are divided into draft and meat animals. A well-trained draft reindeer is worth good money. The reindeer herders visit their relatives and friends, drive their herds, and hunt and procure firewood, all with the help of the draft reindeer. Household chores are strictly divided between family members. Women look after the house and children, while men are in charge of the reindeer. The Yenisei Nensis continue to preserve their native language, national forms of dress, housing, and traditional customs and habits. Women make garments, footwear, and tents of the reindeer hides. A large herd is an indicator of the material position of a family and its main source of income. Venison and fresh fish are the main foods of the indigenous people. In winter, they eat slices of frozen venison dipped into salt. This dish is called stroganina. It is followed by a very strong tea, which is drunk profusely. The most coveted dish is fresh venison called nayabad, which is only prepared by men. Tender pieces of liver, kidneys, and fat are eaten first, after having been dipped in blood. In the absence of vegetables and fruit, the Nensi get the vitamins necessary to stay healthy from raw meat and blood. Sometime in the future, the children of the reindeer herders will return to the mountains and tread again on the long-forgotten paths of their ancestors. Meanwhile, they enjoy life and try to be like their parents, but remain kids all the same. At the end of April, the Yenisei Nensi celebrate the rites of spring and the beginning of the great Heiro, a holiday marked on the first day the sun appears and the polar night is over. Dozens of teams of reindeer from all corners of the tundra flock together to the settlement of Tukard to take part in reindeer races. This is the only chance for quite a few of the locals to meet their numerous relatives, because most of the time they roam with their reindeer on the boundless expanses of the tundra.
Ну ладно, смотрите на здоровье.
Лето держать будешь?
The sun rises ever higher with each passing day, warming the snow and earth. The herds of reindeer migrating in spring number from several dozen to several hundred. Stags are a rare sight at the end of April. One herd follows another for days on end. On the way, some animals lag behind and join other herds. Regardless of this, the leaders steer a steady course to the north and find the right way without hesitation. It remains a mystery how they can orient themselves so correctly. On May 1st, after marking May Day with a good dinner, we took our little Bambi and went to see the reindeer, wishing to introduce our wooden friend to its wild brethren. We were interested to know how the reindeer would behave upon seeing a wooden replica. In ancient times, the locals used such dummies for hunting reindeer. At first, the animals did not react to it at all, but when we came closer, they began to stir in a worried manner. They were curious to inspect it, yet fear of the wooden monster got the upper hand, and they moved away. Soon, the last herds abandoned the places where the reindeer spend the winter, with the bucks at the rear. The mountains are deserted until late autumn. To encounter a reindeer here now is a rare event. We have to hurry in order to follow the herds. To overtake them, we fly some 200 kilometers to the north, to the center of the Puturana Plateau, in the vicinity of the Kibarba River. The surroundings of this river are quite different from those near Lake Beldunshana. This is a realm of bottomless canyons and ice-cold rocks, completely alien to man. All around us is wild, sinister nature. We must rely only on our own strength and experience. Our life here is more difficult and austere now. We feel much closer to the surrounding world and are at the same level with the wild inhabitants of this mysterious land. The reindeer should appear here any day. As we wait, we can only watch how bighorn snow sheep roam the slopes gathering last year's grass. Snow sheeps are the old-timers and real masters of these places. For them, spring is the greatest holiday, for it brings warmth and light. Life on the edge of the rocks, when the temperature drops to -50, is really difficult for them. The reindeer appear quite unexpectedly and fill the previously empty mountain slopes. As always, does and young animals are in the lead. They stop at places where there is less snow, and they can rest and nibble last year's dried grass. To survive in such constantly changing conditions is only possible if one knows how to find food and restore the strength that will be diminished with each passing day. These northern wanderers are a true miracle. They are constantly on the move and get practically no rest. The constantly accumulating fatigue can play a mean trick on any one of them, for death treads on their heels. In the beginning of May, bears awaken from hibernation. The reindeer is a difficult prey for a bear, and so it painstakingly ransacks the slopes and dried riverbeds in search of anything left from the winter. The presence of such a neighbor near our camp disturbed us. Once, we heard a noise outside, close to our tent.
Вась, слышишь, что-то за палаткой ходит? Давай потихоньку дверь открывай.
We looked out, but luckily, it was only an Arctic fox.
Это писец.
By the middle of May, the migration of the reindeer in the central part of the plateau reaches its peak. They can be seen everywhere, on the steep slopes and even on the rocks, as if wishing to outstrip the snow sheep in adroitness and fearlessness. Some reindeer descend to the bottom of dried rivers, where it is more difficult and dangerous to move. To run from and escape beasts of prey while treading on pebbles is well nigh impossible. Besides, impregnable rocks are on all sides. An experienced leader will never take its herd along this path. Now is the time when the plateau empties out. The reindeer disappear as quickly as they came. Only traces of their hooves remain on the patches of snow and earth. At the end of May, having crossed the mountain ridges, the reindeer reach the northern plains. They've been traveling for 2 months. By now the bucks begin to grow little soft antlers. Having left the mountains, the reindeer scatter around the northern plains, continuing their steady march further north. In order to not lag behind the reindeer in the boundless tundra, unable to get a helicopter, we're going to raft on the Taimyr River, the biggest on the Taimyr Peninsula, which winds around it like a web and takes in hundreds of rivulets, brooks, lakes, and marshes. We shall have to travel about 500 kilometers in this mysterious world, lost amidst the empty expanses of the Arctic. The beginning of summer in the Arctic is the time for passage of the birds. As it becomes warmer in this land of perennial cold, thousands upon thousands of birds from all corners of the globe flock together. They cover thousands of kilometers to spend a short polar summer here and give birth to their offspring. The polar tern is a record holder, in as far as the distance of its flight is concerned. To reach these places from the southern hemisphere, it covers about 10,000 kilometers. Thousands upon thousands of waterfowl gather here. Calm backwaters of the rivers and lakes are a reliable abode for them. One-year-old geese begin to shed at this time, and because of this they cannot fly. They bunch together in big flocks. Young geese spend much time foraging, gathering young plants on riverbanks. It is only in a year's time that they will form a family. At the end of June, each doe gives birth to a calf. For the first few months, the does feed their offspring with milk, but after only a few weeks, the calves are able to boldly roam in the tundra, nibbling the lush grass. The reindeer are always on the move. Moving around the tundra haphazardly, they can cover hundreds of kilometers in several days, crossing many rivers, lakes, and rivulets on the way. It is the middle of summer, and the bright sun is warmer with every passing day. The tundra is blossoming. Nature creates a gamut of colors brighter and richer on a comparatively small patch of land than any experienced gardener would be capable of. Whoever visits these places at this time of the year could hardly say that the tundra is a dull and monotonous desert. It is very rich in colors, grass, and bushes. As it becomes warmer, midges and other blood-sucking insects begin to attack all living beings in the tundra. The reindeer suffer a great deal from these voracious parasites. Small groups of animals flock together in huge herds within several days, as if driven by an invisible shepherd. Some of them number up to 100,000 head. Driven mad by the bloodsuckers, they seem to forget about food and rest in an attempt to flee from these winged butchers. Losing control of themselves, they plunge into rivers and lakes, where many young and weak calves, unable to swim for a long time in very cold water, drown or lose their mothers, finding themselves amid unfamiliar grown-up animals. Scientists think that this phenomenon is connected to the heat and the swarms of blood-sucking insects. It is at this time that the animals exchange information about the state of their population with the help of a complex system of signals. These big concentrations of wild reindeer can be observed for a week. As the heat abates, big herds split into small groups scattered around the tundra and roam about the southern spurs of the Moraga Mountains. Some herds cross them and reach the Arctic tundra, where they will graze until the end of summer. These animals would be doomed to suffer without the help of man. In an attempt to save their animals from mosquitoes and other insects, the reindeer breeders burn branches of green bushes in order to generate as much smoke as possible to steer off the onslaught. Reindeer herders, just as the reindeer themselves, are constantly on the move. They don't stay long in one place because the reindeer eat up the grass very quickly, and any delay would be fraught with hunger and death. This is why the reindeer herders' families change their stopping places every 7 to 10 days, roaming about the tundra. The Yenisei-Nensis abide by their age-old traditions. For them, many objects of civilization are useless. The tundra is their home, and the soft moss is their bed. They are always busy doing something. Even little kids do not lag behind the grown-ups. Their way of life is absolutely alien for men from the continent. We move deeper and deeper into the land of the reindeer. The cold kingdom of the tundra, boundless as the ocean, captivates us more and more with every passing day. Despite great expanses and emptiness, we never feel lonely. All around us are many chances to meet unexpected guests, consisting of the reindeer, wolves, birds, and numerous little animals. Some 10 years ago, man was the complete master of these places. Little hunters' huts were erected along the river, in which trappers stayed in the winter when they hunted for the Arctic fox, whose fur was very valuable in Russia at the time. Now it is out of fashion, and these animals are in less danger. Following the reindeer up to the north, we reach the foothills of mountains whose peaks almost reach the sky. This is the Moraga Mountain range. According to the myths of the local Naganasan people, this is the country of the dead, or the land of the shamans. It was to these places that the souls of the dead Nancies flew. It was not by accident that the indigenous people buried their people with their heads to the north, in the direction of the Moraga Mountains. At present, only a handful of these people live in the dying nomad camps on the banks of southern rivers in the tundra. The mountain country meets us with very good weather. The soil here is frozen solid up to a depth of 100 meters, but on the surface there is a thin layer of moss, lichen, and cereal plants. Here at the foot of the mountains, the long journey of the reindeer to the north comes to an end. Free of the bloodsuckers at long last, they enjoy grazing amid the lush grasses of the tundra. The latter half of August is the end of summer, the time for the reindeer to return to their wintering places. Now the animals have to go back and once again withstand the trials and tribulations of their long journey. Only part of them will reach their wintering places. The reindeer swim across the Taimyr River for the last time, hoping to return next year. The days become shorter, and the nights longer and colder. The places here are difficult to live in. Danger lurks in wait for all living beings at almost every step, even for such strong and courageous animals as musk oxen. Nothing edible can be grown on these lands. The only food available here is the meat of the local animals. Professional hunters gather on the banks of big rivers, waiting for the herds of the reindeer. At river crossings, the reindeer are absolutely defenseless. The reindeer moving at the head of groups suffer big losses. The ones following them have greater chances of staying alive, as the men shooting them for venison get what they require. This seemingly inhuman method of shooting is necessary for the reindeer themselves. The presence of overly large herds of reindeer threatens the life of the animal population due to sicknesses and the shortage of fodder. Every year, about 60,000 reindeer are shot on the Taimyr Peninsula, and about 30,000 fall victim to beasts of prey. These are small losses for a million-strong population of reindeer. When they employ rational methods of shooting, professional hunters can get much more meat. Venison is in great demand on the market. Ecologically pure, it is tender and tasty, as good as veal. Light frosts become regular. The temperature drops, and gusts of northerly wind change everything all around. The slopes of the mountains become covered with snow, and winter sets in for 8 long months, when everything turns black and white. The frosts are getting harder, and this is a signal for the reindeer. They leave the tundra, head up the slopes of the mountains, and then descend into deep canyons. Soon they will reach the southern lakes of the Putorana Plateau, where their great journey will end. According to experts, reindeer are estimated during their seasonal migration to cover stretches of about 2,000 kilometers. Migration solves their main problem, that of food. Staying in a single place would lead to death, for the grass and leaves in one site would be depleted very quickly. We stand on the brink of a deep canyon. The surface is covered with snow, and we feel the touch of the biting cold. The time of parting is very close. After living side by side with the reindeer for 8 months, we feel like part of their extended family. We think we know everything about them now, but this is not so. Nature keeps many of its secrets to herself, and we shall have to learn more about them. Life in the north is very hard and dangerous. The reindeer are a symbol of courage and purposefulness in this land of eternal blizzards and frosts. They seem to have become the pulse of the land. The fate of the reindeer is the fate of all inhabitants of the stern and beautiful Taimyr. They seem to be the last phantoms in the world of wild nature, who bring the long-awaited spring to the vast expanses of this, the land of the reindeer.